Dear colleagues, dear friends, that's my immense pleasure and honor to welcome you from rainy Brussels. Unfortunately, I'm not in Mexico City, and you are not in Mexico City. Mexico City, which I love, which book about which history, culture, and football occupy big part of my library at home here in Brussels, and which reminds me about my backpacking trip to Mexico 20 years ago. 10 years ago, the visit to the International Conference of Data Protection Commissioners and Privacy Commissioners in Mexico City, but also the visit 5 years ago at the Asian and Pacific Privacy Assembly meeting in Manzanillo. Eh, all these days are uh, in the past. Right now, the remote meetings are the only ones that can gather the people from all over the globe, and well, that's how we try to proceed, and that's how we live. We live in the extremely digital world today. Thanks for our Mexican friends from INAI to organize this conference, despite all these obstacles, all these troubles that we had. Well, today in the morning I woke up and I found out that Facebook is informing me that 2 years ago I was at the previous real life conference of data protection commissioners in Tirana. It was exactly 2 years ago. Then I checked on Twitter what happened in the world and what are the things to be read about. Then my Apple iPhone informed me what's going on at work. And finally, I had to decide together with my daughter if she keeps the Google account because she feels herself Belgian, and and the GDPR age of consent is 13 in Belgium, or she rather feels herself Polish, and then the age of consent from GDPR in Poland is 16. So, being 14, she had to decide if she wants to use this account with the help of the father as the adult, or rather alone. Not surprisingly, she chose to be connected rather with his Belgian location than with the Polish one. Why I do say all these things? Because all that happened one day, the same day that we saw these advertisements that are before the sessions and between the sessions of the international conference, and which show us, uh, apart from the fact that we are dependent on the technology, that probably we start to dependent on those who play this technology with. So I have enormous pleasure today to continue the discussion about the role of the technology and its development in the future digital society. And I have this opportunity with those that whom I was talking about, the big players on the market. I could speak myself on this topic until the end of the conference, but of course you didn't come here to listen to the European Data Protection Supervisor. And the conference, the open part of the international conference, is a time when we want to listen to those who have something important to say about the future, but also those who will build this future themselves. So I have enormous pleasure today to welcome five speakers of today's panel: Jane Horvath, Chief Privacy Officer of Apple; Erin Egan, Chief Privacy Officer of Facebook; Keith Enright, Chief Privacy Officer of Google; uh, Andrew Clearwater, Chief Trust Officer in OneTrust; and Damian Kieran, Global Data Protection Officer and Legal Director in Twitter. And let's start by the introductory remarks from our uh, panelists. Well, I always had a problem how to schedule and how to create the list of the speakers. And let's start in alphabetic order. So, alphabetic order by the name of the company. So, can I ask Apple to start the general remarks on the subject of this panel, the future of privacy and technology, challenges and possible solutions.
Sure. Thank you so much for hosting today. And I am, like Wojciech, very sorry not to be in Mexico City. I fondly remember the conference about 10 years ago in Mexico City. So unfortunately, I'm sitting in my home in California and we're having a cold snap. So it's not even sunny, warm California, it's sunny, cold California. I thought it would be helpful just to give a little bit of opening remarks on how Apple views privacy. And as an aside, I look at the screen and we all come from very, very different companies. And there's a tendency to lump us all together as big tech. And there's an acronym that goes around GAFA, GAFAT, GAFAMA. And I think that from a privacy perspective, that acronym cannot be used because I think we are vastly different. We have different business models. We look at data differently. And so I'm going to talk about how Apple looks at privacy. And at Apple, privacy is a fundamental human right. It is one of our core corporate values. And it is an area that our CEO is very, very dedicated to. It's not a marketing gimmick. It is actually something that he is very, very much focused on. And privacy is built in from everything that we do from the very beginning. So we have Apple's very focused on teams at the company. So we have privacy legal, privacy policy, privacy engineers, privacy PR, and privacy product marketing, all working from the very beginning as we build products. I remember back when Watch was first developed, when the idea of Watch was developed, and I knocked on my door from two engineers, and they said, we want to develop a wearable. We're just at the very, very beginning stages, but we know it's going to involve data and we know it's going to involve privacy. So we want your team embedded from the very beginning. So that is the common way. People don't want to be on the wrong side of privacy at Apple. So they're always seeking out the privacy professionals. And so how do we advise our teams as we're working on products? GDPR is, of course, very, very critical, and as are all of the world's privacy laws. But we really have four main pillars that we implement as we design products, and they build on each other. The first is data minimization. Collect the minimum amount of data possible. And an example of that is our Maps product. So every time you use Apple Maps, a new random identifier is created by your phone that is used to communicate with Apple servers. If you're on a long trip, that random number will reset itself a number of times, so we can't string together your location. Apple does not collect or retain an historical record of your location. The second is on-device processing, and that means for sensitive data processing, we try to do that on device. The devices are massively sophisticated and powerful now, and so we feel like for certain sensitive processes, we can now do it on device. And with iOS 15, all Siri audio utterances will stay on device unless you opt in to share them with Apple for purposes of analytics. So all audio processing is now done on device. Transparency and choice is the third. And that means letting our customers know what's happening with their data and giving them choices about that. Last year, we announced two new products. The first, privacy nutrition labels. Every app on the App Store has to publish a privacy nutrition label, and that nutrition label is in a common format. So it enables customers, before they download apps from the App Store, to compare different apps side by side to look at their privacy nutrition labels. And then the other product that we launched in the transparency and choice area is the app tracking transparency prompt. So that allows customers, it's not anti-advertising, but it allows customers to make a choice as to whether they want an app to track them. And what tracking means is either linking to third-party data, to your app data, or for purposes of advertising, or sharing your app data with data brokers. So that prompt will come up when an app wants to call either the identifier for advertising or in any other way wants to track, and consumers get the choice. They can continue or they can decide that they don't want to be tracked. And in the App Store, if you say no, the app still needs to operate. And then the final is security. You can't have privacy without good, robust security. And encryption is one way that we are very, very dedicated to pushing forward on security. And so that is how Apple looks at privacy, and we're going to continue to iterate and hope that Wojciech, you raised the your iPhone told you what you were going to do at work. That is all on-device processing. That isn't Apple telling you what you're doing at work. That is actually your iPhone, and your iPhone should know about you, but Apple shouldn't. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will not comment the statements. We will go to the questions in a while. But I would like to ask Erin Egan from Facebook to continue with her point of view on the challenges for privacy and for the technology.
Thank you so much. And I woke up this morning with a little bit of a hoarse voice, so I hope you can hear me and forgive me if I'm grabbing my water. Thank you so much for having me. This invitation is especially meaningful because, like you, Wojciech, and Jane mentioned, 10 years ago, we were in Mexico City, but I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary at Facebook. So that conference was the first ever event I attended on behalf of the company. And I'll never forget how welcoming you all were as hosts and how insightful I found the discussion. And I just want to thank NIE for your leadership to bring this Global Privacy Assembly to Latin America again. And I, like everyone else, I only wish we were together in person. When I think about the past 10 years, I mean, technology and data have changed things so much. I can video chat with relatives across the world. I never get lost when I'm driving. I can stay connected to the causes, the businesses I care about, even as I continue to socially distance. And as we're all working to emerge from COVID-19, technology has helped people find vaccines, get access to authoritative health information, and data has enabled public health officials to understand and rapidly respond to the pandemic. So I know that changes in technology and data use also present challenges. New technology, new uses of data, they raise important questions about how people's privacy is protected. But I'm hopeful because as we create new ways of using data, we have venues like this one, places where we can come together as a privacy community and answer hard questions. And I'm hopeful because if we collaborate, we can build technology that empowers people all around the world. Now, over the past 10 years, Facebook's approach to privacy has evolved. What we've learned, especially since Cambridge Analytica and GDPR entering into force, is that privacy is a fundamental business priority and a real competitive advantage. If we don't protect people's privacy, and more to the point, if people don't trust that we're protecting their privacy, we're not going to be in business anymore. Full stop. So following the GDPR going into effect, our 2019 agreement with the FTC, we've built a comprehensive cross-company data governance program. We have thousands of people working on privacy across the company. Like Apple, we have privacy legal, privacy policy, privacy comps, privacy marketing, security. We also have added levels of oversight and accountability, including, for the first time, a requirement that Mark Zuckerberg personally certify that our privacy work across the company meets our commitments. And we have a privacy committee on our board of directors and an independent privacy assessor that helps us identify ways we can improve. So these changes have been an important investment in the rigor and depth that will enable us to build responsibly over the long term. But in addition to this, over the past 10 years, we've continued to improve the way we build privacy into our people-centered products and technology. For example, we're continuously working to improve tools that give people more control over the personalized products and services they use, like the ability to archive past posts in bulk, or to send a message that's end-to-end encrypted and disappears automatically. Likewise, we've been investing in a multi-year effort to build a portfolio of privacy-enhancing technologies, or PETs. These are advanced ways of aggregating and anonymizing data that minimize how much data we process while preserving people's ability to receive customized services and businesses' ability to ensure their messages get to the right audience. We think pets will be as critical to the internet as the microchip is for computers. They're complex, expensive to build, but they'll be the foundation that powers tomorrow's internet, and we're committed to investing in them. Looking ahead, one thing remains certain: the issues we face are only going to increase in complexity. Just as smartphones, the internet, social media have changed how we interact in the last decade, so much will change in the next decade, especially as we develop the AR and VR technologies of the metaverse. This metaverse, this is not something Facebook's going to design or operate alone. Its success depends on companies building services that work together across platforms. It must be a joint venture. In that same way, we, as a privacy community, we also need to work together collaboratively, companies, regulators, members of civil society, to reimagine our privacy expectations and regulations for this new context. I want to give one example before I close. We recently released Ray-Ban Stories. These are glasses with embedded cameras on the frames that allow you to take short photos and videos. To build this product, we knew, of course, we have to consider privacy beyond the baselines set in GDPR or FTC agreement, traditional data protection principles. So what did we do? We conducted more than 60 engagements with experts, privacy, civil liberties, human and civil rights, prior to the launch of Ray-Ban Stories, and we incorporated their feedback. Because of their feedback, the videos and pictures you take using Ray-Ban Stories are only sent to Facebook servers if and when you decide to share them. And based on that feedback, we designed an LED light that will give a clear visual signal when a person uses the glasses to take a picture or record. And as an additional cue, you have to take an obvious action like pushing a button on the glasses or saying, take a video out loud to take a picture or record a video. So as we develop novel form factors and innovate in the AR, VR context, getting privacy right is critical. There's so many questions we don't even know yet to ask. And so for us to innovate responsibly, we're going to continue to seek and implement informed external feedback at every step along the way. That's why I'm at the company. That's what my team does. That's all we do. Fortunately, time is on our side. In the past, technology has moved so fast that regulators and policymakers have constantly had to play catch up. But with AR, VR, we're just at the beginning. So I'm really hopeful. New technologies, they bring new possibilities. And to build these technologies responsibly, we're going to build them in collaboration with the data protection community. Getting the future right, it's not the purview of one company or one country. Privacy is something we all have to protect together. And we look forward to continuing to work with everyone at this conference towards that goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask Keith to continue from Google perspective.
Certainly. Thank you. I want to say hello to everybody. I too, like my fellow panelists, wish that I could have been in Mexico City for this event, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all and to appear here. Want to talk today about the future of privacy and technology and the important roles that tech companies and regulators play in delivering strong protections and great outcomes for people around the world. Now, expectations of companies are changing. People want better product experiences, they want better security, and they want better privacy protections than they've ever had in the past. It's our job to meet or exceed all of those expectations. Now, the way we go about this at Google is by applying the same level of investment and innovation to privacy and security protections and regulatory compliance that we do to developing new services, features, and devices. Now, in doing this work, there's a lot of common themes with things you've heard from the other panelists. We're guided by 3 core principles. First, we're committed to keeping your information secure by default with advanced industry-leading security. Protections are automatically built into your Google account and into every Google product. There's a bunch of examples of this. I'll hit on 3 real quickly. Gmail automatically blocks more than 100 million phishing attacks every single day. Play Protect runs security scans on over 100 billion installed apps around the world. And to protect our users from malicious activity, we check over 1 billion saved passwords for breaches daily. Being able to apply those kinds of protections at scale goes to tremendous benefit for users all over the world and keeping them safe as they're using the internet. Now, our second principle is treating users' data responsibly with privacy by design. And as Erin was saying, this is about doing more than complying with the specific requirements of any law or regulation. It's about doing the right thing from the outset as we design and offer products and services to users. Now, at Google, our key strength is technical innovation. And we're leaning hard on that strength to develop and deploy the industry's most effective, intuitive, and innovative privacy technologies. We've offered data minimization tools like Auto Delete, which gives you the choice to have Google automatically and continuously delete certain data from your account. We've made Auto Delete the default setting for all new Google accounts, so that now activity data that's older than 18 months is automatically deleted for more than 2 billion users per day. Now, we all recognize that more and more data is being created and collected around the world as people's lives become increasingly digital, but keeping users in control with strong settings like Auto Delete is allowing us to implement privacy by design in the way that our services are offered. We also invented Federated Learning, which is a new approach to machine learning that enables processing on mobile devices without centralized training data. And we've built the world's largest open source library of differential privacy algorithms. Now, that helps everyone from cancer researchers to census analysts apply privacy preserving technology to their work. Finally, we provide meaningful controls and tools to our users so that they remain in control of their online experience and of their data. Now, these controls need to be effective, intuitive, and easy to use, which is why we continually invest in and improve upon them. You can find these in your Google account, which saw over 3 billion visits from our users last year. Now, to maximize user engagement with and understanding of these account settings, we created a comprehensive privacy checkup that helps more than 500 million people per year choose the privacy settings that are right for them to keep them in control of their experience. We were also the first in industry to create Google Takeout to promote data portability, empowering users to easily download their personal data and switch to other services before that was a legal requirement. It's been a core value in the way that we design our products and services, and we're proud of leading industry in that regard. Now, finally, we're really focused and increasingly focused on constructive and productive engagement with regulators around the world. This is why this event specifically is so essential and important to us every year. Data flows are global, and we need to work with all of you to ensure that strong privacy protections are in place and that our products and services can be used with trust and confidence. Now, clarity and harmonization helps enable and drive compliance. And we welcome the opportunity to share what we're doing and to learn from all of you across regulatory environments around the world so that we can understand your interpretations and your expectations of us, and we can work together to advance our shared objective in really strong compliance. So thank you again for having me here today, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this important conversation.
Thank you very much. Slightly different approach, I guess, from OneTrust, since this company definitely differs from the other in the panel.
Sure. Happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on the future of privacy. I'm a lawyer. My career is focused on the intersection of technology and data protection, and I work at a company that helps other companies do the same. So My role is unique in the sense that I'm a trust officer, which means that we're bringing together privacy with other topics to make sure that all the stakeholders together are working to build trust. And looking forward at the privacy landscape, as we are in this panel, certainly over the last year, we've seen more and more of the world enact and propose privacy and data protection legislation. And according to Gartner, by 2023, 65% of the world's population will have personal data covered under modern privacy regulations, which is up from 10% in 2020. Now, however you want to measure that, it's a big impact, right? And that's part of the focus of our company, is making sure that companies are aware of these things and can take action on these requirements. And beyond that, of course, we're looking at a trend to more and more organizations having appointed leaders for their privacy programs. And that rapid increase in privacy leadership is also part of an important trend for this space. So essentially, we see companies undergoing two journeys. There's the journey of a company to get to operational compliance. And of course, there's a need to support them with policy and technology to bridge that gap. But there's also a second step that people are getting to, and that's to kind of make privacy a competitive advantage. And that's the expertise of this group. Overall, we have 11,000 customers in all industries around the world that we're helping with this rapid change. And I think what I wanted to add to this discussion is a sense of just how trust is important to the future of privacy, and how the future of trust is obviously more than compliance, and it's a collaboration. And our company centers itself around security and privacy, and ethics, compliance, diversity, sustainability, a whole host of related subjects. And together with this role, or the team that supports trust, we're hoping to make a difference. So I think we're just making clear this added value, and we're trying to ask better questions so that we can get to better answers. And the future of privacy is going to take great people and great technology, and we've assembled a good panel to cover both.
Thank you very much. And Twitter and Damian, could you please comment the title as well? The title of the panel.
Hello. Okay, great. Thank you, Wojciech. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you to my distinguished colleagues as well for joining the panel with us. Obviously, like everyone else, I wish we were in Mexico today. I too, like Wojciech, got a reminder recently from my Apple iPhone of time in Tirana only 2 years ago. So I think memories are being served to everyone in plentiful spades these days. So I think this is a very important conversation, and obviously it's something that's incredibly important to what my team does at Twitter, but not just my team at Twitter, but how Twitter views privacy and data protection as a construct at the company. We're obviously considerably smaller than some of my peers on the panel today. So when we approach these challenges, we approach them in a slightly different way. It means that what we do is we try to think about fundamentally, how do we build respectful products? And I use the word respectful quite deliberately, because it's not just about privacy and data protection. It's about a host of things that impact the way a product, a feature, a piece of infrastructure, operational process will work or interact with a variety of different systems, both internally and externally at the company. I think over the last 2 years, it is incredible how much data has impacted the way everybody is living. Work has been impacted, travel has stopped, or travel slowed down. Work stopped for some people. Work has irreversibly changed for many others. And I think data have helped all of us. Data was harnessed, as Aaron said, with vaccines or shopping or working from home to reestablish travel and a host of other things. But with that also comes a heightened awareness of the potential broader challenges that technology can bring, right? And so it is incumbent on all of us to address those challenges together. And I think if we don't do that, we can have increased risks that, for example, access to technology can result in social exclusion or de facto denial of civil rights, but also that inherent challenges with technology, if they're not addressed when the technology is designed and executed, that can bring about the privacy and data protection concerns that we all seek to offset. And part of the way that we offset those is we look at working with organizations, working with governments, working with peer companies, working with NGOs to try to build and respect privacy as a fundamental human right, because Twitter does fundamentally take that perspective. But from those rights-based foundations, then we need to be thoughtful and deliberate in building technologies and structures that reward the design and development of respectful products and services. And if we build respectful products and services, then we're doing our job. And at Twitter, part of what we do is try to build those products and services to enable the public conversation. And part of enabling the public conversation is enabling healthy conversations. And that requires harnessing data, and it requires harnessing different technologies to do that in ways that respect different constructs of privacy, different constructs of data protection around the world by region and by country. And so I'm looking forward to having a conversation today about how Twitter approaches some of these challenges and what are the practices that we bring to bear in addressing them.
Thank you very much. Thank you for these opening statements. Well, I have to say that I was a little bit surprised that when we asked about the general observations over the subject of the conference, of the panel, most of you was actually presenting the products that you prepare and look to the future through the products. That was quite practical, but at the same time, that was rather the presentation time. So I will continue a little bit asking about the good part of the story and the good part of the challenges that we have. I'm fully aware of the fact that last 2 years were difficult for the companies and that COVID has created the special problems. But being an optimist, I would like to ask what was the most important decision that you made in your organization when it comes to use or no use of certain data technologies in the context of pandemic? More generally, do you believe that the technology does live up to expectations? Is technology a vector towards more or less trust in the digital world? And how so? And now I think we'll take a little bit different order, and let's try with alphabet, but the names of the speakers. So we'll start with OneTrust and with Andrew Clearwater.
Sure, happy to do that. So I think, we are in a bit of a unique situation in the sense that, we helped a lot of other companies use their data well. And it was certainly an important time to do that. We had a lot of customers who were facing quite the conundrum with the pandemic. So many different things that they had to review, so many different things they had to change. Of course, front and center was the move to remote work. We saw an increase in traffic for people who were engaging with our team, asking questions about that, looking for resources on that. And, these questions really could have ranged from anything from, how to take temperatures on site to building technology to track and trace the spread of the virus. So during this time, our company, our CEO said, we need to bear hug our customers, right? Because we're all going through such a hard time. And so for us, that meant sort of doubling down on the things that we normally do, but trying to do them to the best of our ability to help. And what that looked like in this case is helping some of our customers deal with the variations in the guidance. This is something that we look for from this audience. We want guidance. We want to know more about what we should be doing and how. But that variation is also one of the greatest challenges that our customers sought to kind of sort through and figure out, okay, what should I know about? What should I find common among these things so I can make the best program that works in sort of a multi-jurisdictional context? So we released some guidance as an example on some key topics where we tracked, general guidance, working from home, employee data, visitor data, disclosure of individuals' condition, some subsets of cybersecurity topics, and an exception to usual enforcement processes that were being noted. And all of these came in, and there were more than 30 reports just in the general guidance, for example, and we were trying to help people chart a course through all of this information, because the value of the information is actually getting it to the company and making that actionable, and we wanted to make sure that that was possible. So thank you, of course, to this audience for the creation of all that, and part of our support was to help with getting that to the people who could use it. We also did some work in terms of our technology platform and making sure that some of the solutions that people were using every day around reviewing vendors or data maps or something like that continued, but suited their needs for the time. But we also made sure that the specific workflows that we were talking about in sort of that research sense, the guideline sense, that things were covered so that they could go into the platform and say, all right, I need to know about contact tracing. How am I going to take action on that? So overall, it was sort of a helping with research, helping with people, helping with technology. And the result was that we got to watch a lot of creative ways that businesses had pivoted across industries and made for some really positive change. And technology obviously has the potential to build and destroy trust, and we're happy to see that there are many ways in this case that technology was used to build trust.
Erin, can you please tell us in 3 minutes what is the Facebook experience, and do you believe that technology does live up to expectations?
Thank you. When COVID first hit, there was a lot of pressure on companies, the companies here, to contribute to the response effort by sharing data. No one knew what to expect. Governments were rightly eager for data that could help them understand COVID's impact and do things like conduct contact tracing, enforce stay-at-home orders. And we obviously, like other companies, we wanted to help with the response effort, but we knew that we had to consider the privacy risks of sharing data. So we took a step back, and as part of our privacy by design process, that included consulting with experts, we implemented safeguards that would allow us to promote privacy and public health. So I'll just give a couple examples. So early in the pandemic, several public entities asked us for information to gauge the effectiveness of lockdowns. So working with privacy engineers and in consultation with privacy and human rights experts, we applied differential privacy to aggregated movement data. So we were able to create what we call movement range maps. Now, these movement maps, they rely on aggregated, anonymized data, but they were useful to help monitor lockdowns in places such as Wales, Indonesia, Mexico, for example. And today, health officials are using this data to directly measure the number of lives saved as a result of people staying home during official lockdowns. We also helped in other ways. We developed new capabilities in our app to connect people to accurate information about COVID-19, to remove harmful content, to help people get vaccinated. Indeed, over 2 billion people have viewed authoritative information about COVID-19 and vaccines on our platform. And more generally, during the pandemic, we have a Data for Good program, and governments and NGOs have extensively relied on this program, which exists in 70 countries, partners with over 500 nonprofits, universities, international institutions, and our publicly available anonymized data sets were downloaded like 1.3 million times. So in my 10 years at Facebook, this response, our COVID-19 response work, is some of what I'm most proud of. It shows the value of technology and data when deployed responsibly and at scale in partnership with nonprofits, government, and research counterparts, that community coming together. So yes, to answer your question, I do think technology can and does live up to its expectations, and I have a lot of hope for what this means for the future.
Thank you very much. Keith, Google.
Sure. I'll keep my comments brief because I know I want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. I share the sentiment that the last year gave us a ton to be optimistic about with respect to technology. Sort of in our experience, specifically at Google, one of the things that I took a great deal of pride in was at a time when we all felt so powerless in the face of the pandemic, our leadership really looked aggressively for ways that we could leverage our technological expertise to try to help public health authorities and to help individuals around the world. Two examples of that we really think were impactful and are great sort of signals for the role of technology in helping society deal with these kind of challenges in the future. One was the community mobility reports, which many of you will hear one of our senior vice presidents, Jen Fitzpatrick, speak more about in the private session of the event. There we, in a very privacy protective way, tried to make information available to governments and health experts to help them manage and operate their pandemic response efforts. And then second, myself and my co-panelist Jane spent countless hours together with our respective engineering teams in both Google and Apple working on exposure notification. And that, I think, was an incredible precedent for the privacy profession generally, in that at the front end of that project, we faced a ton of reasonable skepticism from public health experts and others, suggesting that privacy was somehow going to be an impediment to the effectiveness or the efficaciousness of a new approach to exposure notification. And through our work together and through our engagement with academics, with policymakers, and with technical experts around the world, I really do think we demonstrated privacy was not in tension. In fact, even when you're working quickly under tremendous pressure in an effort to save lives, by putting privacy front and center and by treating it as a non-negotiable prerequisite to a launch, we could actually deliver a better outcome. We could deliver something where trust was essential to adoption of the exposure notification technology. And by having privacy by design be a core design principle, we actually advanced the effectiveness of the technology. So I think we learned a lot, and I think it was a great starting point for the role of technology in society and the role of privacy in technological innovation in future similar challenges that present themselves.
Thank you very much. Jane, Apple point of view.
Yes, thank you. I know Keith has already talked about exposure notifications, and very similar to the other companies, the first spring of the pandemic, when we suddenly went from being a company that was really an in-person focused company to having all of our personnel scattered throughout the world, it gave us a tremendous petri dish in which to work and look at different threats and security threats of having a very remote workforce. And I think that learning that we've taken and continue to take, because I'm sitting in my own home still, will help to move security protections even further. And as far as the pandemic goes, very similar to Facebook and Google, we also work to release anonymized data sets to assist governments. And we made a worldwide release so every government could have access to the same data, and as opposed to working individually with governments. And then on the contact tracing, that was a very interesting problem, because governments really wanted to use Bluetooth in the background, and that was something that iOS did not support for privacy reasons. And so, as Keith detailed, we put some of our most expert engineers on the problem to develop a new use of Bluetooth technology that ameliorated the privacy concerns of having Bluetooth on in the background all the time. And we continue to work with regulators worldwide, as different issues come up, as economies open up and there are different needs of the contact tracing algorithm. We continue to work with them, but always with that focus that we want to keep the data in control of the individual who is carrying the phone.
Okay. So, Damien, it's, I think, quite rare situation where your company is at the end of the alphabet, and you are at the end of the alphabet as well. With
That's
at
okay.
least in the Latin alphabet, it goes like that. So, Twitter.
That's okay. At least it gives me the benefit of hearing my colleagues, Wojciech. So look, there were many similarities in many of the things that we've all done, I think, across the board. And I think it's a little bit difficult to choose one thing, perhaps. But I suppose what I would say is that obviously Twitter had to approach obviously COVID misinformation, and that was something that we had to deal with, which was quite a large issue on the platform at one point in time. So obviously that led to creation of our COVID misinformation policy and enforcement of that. So that was a rather large event. Other things that we did was build and release an API for our developer community to be able to harness the public conversation, particularly around COVID information, both so that people could use it for tracking purposes, could use it for real-time events, could use it for health purposes, a variety of different things. And I think those were large events. And I think also, like Jane, one of the other things that was a large decision and that we're still obviously dealing with is the work from home situation. Twitter is obviously committed to that in a fairly long-term way, and COVID obviously accelerated that commitment. But there are a host of security and data-driven challenges that go with that. And I think those can be easy to gloss over. How do you continue to run a service the size and scale of Twitter where your entire workforce is effectively working from home and do it in a safe, secure, and privacy-respectful way, continue to build and ship new products? And so that's important. I think part of the original question that you had was a prompt around like whether sort of technology was a tool for good or bad or whatever. I think it's an important point that we shouldn't lose as well, is that technology is a tool. It can be used for good and bad. And so it's not about technology being bad or technology being good, but rather how we enable it to be good or bad. And we are, people. And that's where it becomes important to have those relationships with government, robust and reasonable regulation, well-working standards that enable these technologies to be built in ways that deliver on the promises that people expect. And if we have those foundations, we can build those products. And I think that's where the work needs to be put. We shouldn't just look at technology and go, is it good? Is it bad? Is it a vector for bad?
Thank you very much. That was Jane who said that the concept of GAFAM is actually wrong because the companies are differing one from another. So after these questions, which were the same for all of you, I'd like to ask more tailored questions. And now simply by random choosing Google as the first one to be asked, how Google, which employs online user behavior data to target users with more relevant advertising, embed privacy by design and default in its products?
Sure. So first, recognizing that there are differences between the businesses represented on the panel, I would also press there are a lot of similarities as well. If you look at Google, for example, I think there is a misperception that the processing of personal data is essential to the commercial success of the business. In fact, users can use most of Google's products and services for free without having any ads personalization enabled. And no user needs to have personalization turned on. You can turn off your ads personalization at any time. You can remove or mute ads that you don't want to see. And we allow you to see what data was used to show you any particular ad. So we recognize that there's a growing interest in interest-based advertising, the way that it works. We want to make sure that it is as privacy protective as possible, and sort of reinforce for folks that the core Google service of Google Search and most of our services, they actually they don't require a tremendous amount of personally identifiable information to operate and deliver all of the value that users have come to accept. I'd also stress we don't allow sensitive data to be used in targeting ads. Even if a user has opted into ads personalization, we don't allow sensitive data categories to be used for ad targeting. We don't let information like ethnicity or health conditions be used to personalize ads. And one thing that I don't think is widely understood that we need to do a better job of helping users understand is that we don't use information from apps where you primarily store personal content. So things like Gmail, Drive, Calendar, and Photos, we do not use the information that you store in those services to deliver personalized advertising. I think we need to do a better job of making sure that users understand that, because I think there's some misperception around that. Now, finally, the last bit here, which is probably the most complex, and I think we need cooperation across industry as well as with our regulatory counterparts to get it right, is how do we create a future where publishers can be successful without tracking users across sites or apps for ads? We recognize that there's a tremendous amount of interest in getting this right. We've been collaborating recently with industry to propose a more private future for digital advertising, with a goal to fundamentally advance user data protection while continuing to commercially support this incredibly valuable and diverse ecosystem of free content online. We need to collectively work together to solve for some way to allow publishers to profitably run their businesses and to do it in the most privacy protective way possible. To start with that, Chrome intends to phase out third-party cookies. That's been widely reported upon. And we've been working hard to develop alternatives that will allow key ads use cases without cross-site tracking. And then finally, we're recognizing that privacy-preserving technology is now in a place where it's possible to develop and deploy privacy-preserving APIs rooted in techniques like aggregation, on-device processing, federated learning, and other things that we're working on. So we remain optimistic that we can, in fact, support a free and open internet that has tons of rich, diverse, and valuable content, but do it in a way that is even more privacy preserving than anything that was possible in the past.
Okay, Damien, not to be the last in the next round, I would like to ask you now, how has Twitter implemented the concepts of accountability, data protection by design, by default, in terms of fighting with misleading information and probably content moderation? I told in the beginning that I used your service to see what happened in the world, but I'm one of the users who wants to have the data which is not misleading.
It's a great question, Wojciech, and I think so. It's important to know that at Twitter, the concepts of accountability, data protection by design, and by default are not things that we obviously apply just to content moderation or when dealing with misleading information challenges. Right? These are foundational core tenets of how we design, build, and roll out our products and services, internal infrastructure, or anything that is interplaying with data or privacy. To give a sense of that, at Twitter, before the pandemic, the number one company-wide objective for us, that means for every team, was security and privacy. Before that, in 2019, it was the number one objective of our engineering team. And the reason that matters is because when you set that as a company-wide objective at Twitter, it filters down into every team's roadmap, right? All of the things that they are thinking about when they think about health of the conversation, which is how we talk about projects including around misinformation, they have to account for privacy and data protection. Those are things that they must do anyway, following our internal standards and processes. But when we label it as a company-wide objective, it takes on a heightened sense of urgency and importance. And so that means since 2019, these things have been key to roadmaps and have been fundamentally driving how we develop every product and service, policy, piece of infrastructure. The ways that we do that a little bit more tactically are obviously, like many of the peers here, privacy reviews, privacy by design, core principles around data minimization, like those that Jane mentioned earlier on. But then we also have to bring accountability to that. And I think that's incredibly important here, right? It's all well and good to have processes and operational measures, but without the accountability parts to back it up, it's a little bit toothless. So at Twitter, we try to take that accountability quite seriously. And so what we do is, for the last number of years, quarterly, we provide a report to our board of directors without a mandate to do so, meaning an externally driven mandate to do so, about our privacy and data protection practices, what the risks are, what's going on at the company. And we have a discussion from that level, which drives the priorities down through the company to ensure we're aligned. In those reports, we also talk about heightened risks that we see with particular products or services that we're developing, those that are undergoing the mandatory privacy review. Those impact assessments, where they're necessary, also can be discussions at the board level. The other not novelty, but I think something that we take very seriously is that you cannot ship a product unless it goes through a privacy review. And if there are high risks identified, it will not be shipped until those are remediated. And my team has a veto power and has used that on several occasions to stop things going to market unless things have been fixed, remediated, or in certain situations, discussions with regulators before those products have come to market. The other things that we do are really training. So it's one thing to have the accountability, but we also need to make sure that we're empowering the individuals that are working on these products with the tools and knowledge to be able to think every day with these things in mind. And so we have a variety of mandatory trainings depending on what your role is at the company, but we also have things that are designed to make a culture of privacy and data protection. So we have a program, everything's a bird at Twitter, it's called the Doves. And the Doves is like an opt-in data stewardship, data security, data management sort of group. People go and do 2 days of intensive training, and then they go back to their team where they can spend 10 to 20% of their time working on issues that are privacy and data protection related. They act as a hub and they spread their knowledge out throughout the organization. We bring in outside regulators, outside speakers to speak to them, and we've had candid conversations with, DPAs in Europe, FTC, a variety of others between the Doves to make sure that they're getting the knowledge they need to do the job internally, but also regulators are learning how we are doing things internally to protect people externally. And I think ultimately for us, it goes back to this motto that trust is earned, not given. Right? We have to be doing the things to earn people's trust in the way that we develop our products and services, whether that's for misinformation purposes or it's the latest feature in an app.
Jane, from Apple perspective, how the privacy can be the real competitive advantage? Does Apple also consider competition as a privacy advantage? For example, does more genuine competition among the companies in the market bring direct benefits to privacy protection?
Sure. We support robust competition. However, we want to ensure that we can continue providing the robust privacy and security protections people have come to expect from our products. Around the world, many regulators and lawmakers are talking about sideloading or requiring iPhone to support app installation from third-party app stores in the internet. The Digital Markets Act contains such a requirement. The Apple App Store has a key advantage over malware by virtue of its central distribution of apps. Coupled with its unique features of human review, the App Store is dramatically more secure than a system offering non-centralized open distribution. In fact, iOS has almost 98% less malware than the competitive operating system Android. Our iOS devices are also more secure than our Macs. One key difference is that we do allow multiple app stores on Mac. We made this decision because the iOS ecosystem is a much larger and more lucrative target for bad actors than the Mac, which has 1/10 of the active devices that iOS has. Apple viewed the iPhone as a once-in-a-generation opportunity in terms of building security architecture. When you download an app from the App Store, you aren't crossing your fingers hoping that your information won't be stolen or that your device won't be compromised by scams, ransomware, or surveillanceware. This is all made possible by the App Store Review. App Review bolsters security, privacy, and safety on iPhone through 4 key processes. First, we have automated malware scans to help make sure no known malware makes it into the store. This protection is very similar to what we do for the Mac as well. Second, an app's description and features are reviewed by human experts for accuracy. This description is presented to users in the App Store when they evaluate whether to download an app, which creates a barrier against the most common scams used to distribute malware, misrepresenting the malware as a popular app or claiming to offer enticing features that are not actually provided. One recent example of that is Canada announced that their exposure notification was available for download in the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. An enterprising hacker created a lookalike exposure notification app that could be sideloaded. It ended up being sideloaded on Android because iOS didn't allow it. And that app, instead of being a contact tracing app, was actually ransomware. Third, the human experts in app review also manually check that the app doesn't unnecessarily request access to sensitive data and evaluates whether apps marketed for children comply with even more stringent data collection and safety rules. For instance, calculator apps shouldn't need health data access, and games for kids shouldn't be tracking them. And finally, app review and the App Store provide mechanisms to correct issues that may occur, such as working with developers to address problems, removing fraudulent or malicious apps, and providing refunds to users when necessary. With centralized distribution like the App Store, out of the gate, a bad actor app has a poor chance of getting through. Some do, most don't, but if they do, they can be pretty confident that eventually they're going to get shut down. And not only will this one instance of the app get shut down, but then we will have learned and put additional improvements in place that mean that they can't follow up immediately with the same attack over and over. Now, we do believe that we need to be accountable, and I think the privacy laws and the privacy world has worked very hard on separate accountability protections. GDPR requires accountability, and we think that those same principles could be extended in the competition area. So if there was an accusation of self-dealing, or that we have removed or prevented an app from getting onto the App Store, we should be accountable for that. And we should be required to show that the rationale for that was a privacy or security rationale.
Thank you very much. We started half an hour later. I hope that we will be able to save some time, but we still have some questions both from us and from the audience as well. Erin, what has Facebook done in order to apply the principles of data protection by design and by default? And do you think will the business model revolution be needed for the AR and VR technologies?
Thank you. Great questions. Protecting privacy. I'll start with the beginning about how we apply principles of data protection by design and default. As I said at the opening, protecting privacy and data security is a business imperative. Mark Zuckerberg, all of our product leaders, we all know that people will only be comfortable using our products and services, particularly new products that you mentioned, like AR, VR. People are only going to be comfortable if they have confidence that their data will be protected and used responsibly. So how do we do this? We've built this large-scale company-wide privacy program. I mentioned we have accountability that runs up to Mark. We have a privacy review process company-wide. So every new product and changes to existing features that involves people's data comes through this privacy review process, cross-functional group of internal experts who work with product teams to identify and mitigate risk, and they consult. This consultation with external experts is a critical component of our privacy by design process. We bring that feedback inside the process and adopt explicit restrictions on data processing. And so I can address how we think about defaults in that context. We think a lot about defaults for different groups of people. We think a lot about the types of data, and we think about the types of products. So let me just give some quick examples. So when we think about different groups, let's think about young people. So we apply heightened privacy and security features for young people. We default people under 16 who join Instagram to private accounts. We restrict how advertisers on Facebook and Instagram can reach people under 18. And of course, we don't show any ads at all on our under 13 product Messenger Kids. We don't give people under 18 access to products like dating or Facebook Pay or Marketplace. And perhaps most significantly, this is a really great example of where we are. This external feedback is so important. Based on feedback from the community, we recently decided to step back from even building a version of Instagram for tweens, for 10 to 12-year-olds. Now, like our industry peers who have services for under 13s, we do believe that building a version of Instagram for tweens is the right thing to do. I have teenagers. I think it's better, especially for young people, to be online in an age-appropriate environment. But We listened to the advice of our partners in academia, in civil society. They all said, take more time to get this right, even if that meant pausing a years-long project that we believe is important. So we paused. So that's just an example of the type of group. I'll be quick, like types of data. We don't automatically collect precise location information. We only collect it with explicit consent. We offer people, for example, the ability to share certain data on their profiles, like, for example, what they're interested in. That could be sensitive, but it's also really important for some people to express that they're interested in a certain type of person or a certain community. But for that type of data, people must explicitly consent to include it in their profiles. And we don't use it to personalize ads. We also, one last example, we make sure privacy is built into new products. I'm going to give an example of Oculus VR. These VR headsets you might have seen people wearing, they don't send raw images of people's environments to our servers, and movement information that they capture is tied to a unique identifier that's different from a user's account ID. So these are just some examples of how we think through deeply these questions and how we integrate this feedback into what we decide to do. And I want to spend a minute on business models in the metaverse. Privacy is going to be particularly important here. But I do think we should expect advertising to be a part of the products that most companies build for the metaverse. Advertising is important not only to funding the huge investments companies must make to build these technologies, but also sustaining independent creators and developers. Advertising is going to be one way to do it, but we're probably also going to see entirely new business models altogether. But I think more generally, taking a step back, if we're serious about serving everyone, not just people who have a lot of money to spend on a product or device, or people in wealthy countries, we have to have business models that enable everyone to get access to the same services regardless of their ability to pay. That said, any business model needs to operate in a way that's consistent with protecting people's privacy. We can do both. And it needs to be clear to people and regulators what's happening. And we need to invest in privacy enhancing technologies. That is the future. And that's how we're going to be sure that we can operate a business in a way that protects people's privacy.
Thank you very much. And One Trust, Andrew, on the global level, what are the international regulatory spheres, the regional groups, and the forums that One Trust considers relevant? And what do you expect today from the regulators and from the policymakers? You are the one who knows the most about the differences in the approaches by the regulators to the markets.
Well, we certainly tried, and I don't know if we can say that with certainty with this group. But thank you for the question. There's a lot going on globally, and that is one of the great benefits of getting together for this event, is to try to share more about what we're all seeing. I'll highlight a few points here, but of course we can't cover them all. It might make sense to begin with the RIPD, the Ibero-American Data Protection Network, hugely influential in the promotion and development of comprehensive data protection legislation, and something we follow for a few reasons. One, for the standards for personal data protection. Obviously, one of the things that you see us working on is trying to find frameworks that connect laws around the world to make compliance more possible. Certainly another element of their work that we follow is the AI recommendations that come in the form of the processing of personal data in artificial intelligence. And I think that topic and automated decision making is just one of those topics that continues to come up. If we look at specifically regulated automated decision making practices, we see materials in the EU, Brazil, South Africa. If we look at processing operations performed by automated means, we see things in South Korea, Japan, and India. But with the Ibero-American network, this is setting a common denominator, and that's something that's quite important to us and to the companies we've worked with. Two, I guess we could look to APEC and some of the cross-border data data flows work that's being done. You could look back as far as, I guess, 2020 to some of the studies that were done there to look for e-commerce capabilities and cross-border work. We see the report coming out with some differences defining personal data and applicable privacy principles and responsibilities. But of course, the work to harmonize has been impactful. Over the last year, some of the examples of new growth, you might see more approved agents, including the Better Business Bureau in the US. You might see Bermuda announcing its recognition of the cross-border privacy rules systems. And perhaps we will see something with the development of the laws in China leveraging this system. Looking forward to OECD guidelines, obviously core information privacy principle and function that we look to. The flexibility of those principles is their strength, and one of the areas of focus with them has been looking at localization trends. If we look at the conclusions related to requirements of data protection laws and what they've imposed on cross-border transfers, the results of that first report were interesting there. Also, the AI implementation report on the state of implementation looks back to the work done in 2019. So AI, again, something that we're trying to pull from multiple regions and multiple contexts to make sure that we can provide context to our customers. Looking to the Council of Europe, of course, 108 and 108 plus, some of the influential voices have sought in the aftermath of Schrems 2 to kind of look at that with greater detail. We haven't actually seen that much discussion on the topic of using this legally binding international agreement, but it is something that comes up from time to time. And looking forward, seeing a bit of a theme here, we see in September, on the 14th, I believe, 8 organizations coming together, including the Council of Europe, to launch a new portal promoting global cooperation on artificial intelligence. And there you'll see some of these topics on AI covered, and a colleague of mine, Alexis, is presenting a bit more on that Thursday, if anyone's interested. And then nearly reaching the end, I suppose, since we have limited time, the European Data Protection Board, one of the things we do is track guidance and enforcement there. We've observed GDPR enforcement ramping up in the past year, as well as looking to understand processing activities where DPAs plan to provide guidance. What do we expect going forward? Well, we see some actions taken to modernize the regulatory approach. Several of them promoting sandboxes, the CNIL or the Norwegian DPA, or maybe pushing for self-regulation, with the example maybe being codes of conduct. So something that's important to track and follow. And then maybe this group itself, the Global Privacy Assembly, is a forum that we attend, can't say for 10 years, but many. And it's a place where we look to understand what stakeholders are facing, and it's a review of the resolutions that have been taken in prior years, is sort of a review of the issues of our time. And so, thank you for putting on this event.
I can see that the organizers were asking us to go to the conclusions of the panel, but of course we planned to have one more question. So my proposal is that I will just ask the question, and there's one notion that you will each of you answer with. The question is simply taking into account technological trends. What will be, from your perspective, the biggest challenge for the privacy and data protection in the next few years? One notion. Apple.
I think cybersecurity. I think there is a cyber war going on now, and I think we're going to have to be constantly tightening down security and iterating on.
Facebook. Erin.
Keith, did you want to say something? Sorry, I wasn't sure if I would cut you off.
Oh,
I guess
yeah, I hadn't spoken.
Oh, okay, yeah, and I wasn't sure. Sorry, Wojciech, I wasn't sure who you were asking, but we don't have the technology yet that's going to define the next 10 years, much less the consensus. And so I think it's about collaboration. That's the future, and I'm going to leave on that note.
Okay, so Twitter.
Responsible AI and ML.
Google.
Deploying privacy protective technologies in a way that protects the free and open internet.
And OneTrust.
I would say working together and collaborating to address privacy issues through privacy, security, ethics, and ESG.
Thank you very much. Though the time is running out, I want to make some short summary at least, because this is not the end of this discussion, and we will be first of all having it throughout the whole conference. And I think the people will be reacting on your perspectives, your proposals, your challenges that you are talking about. I always consider that the privacy rules are not the end of themselves, and it has to be the discussion which is more about the dignity of the persons, because we are not protecting the data, we are protecting the human beings. So we are the part of the discussion about the future understanding of what the dignity of the human being is. That has to be the joint action to fight for the individual rights, and that has to be something that we do all together, the business, the society, the representatives of the society, the administration, and the politicians, and finally the regulators. But I'm not naive about the future. We will also see the proliferation of interconnected devices, extending attack on the criminal attack and sponsored hacking. We will have the problems with gaining access to information and disruption of the services, and part of that is the answer about cybersecurity being the challenge. We are not questioning as data protection the technologies. We do not protest against the development and about the innovation. But there will be the moments when we will be saying again and again the questions and the principles that we were believing in the past, and we hope that we will not stay as the prophets on the hill, trying to remind the old commandments in the world, which will look completely different than we remember. For instance, I think that we should also stop the development at the places where we are not ready for it. Some of you have said that you didn't take the chances and the models that were proposed because you think that they are not ready yet. We also think that there are the technologies that have to be somehow limited and somehow stopped. And we have to remember that we do all this in the world where the sovereignty is more often discussed than solidarity. And solidarity in the global solutions is the thing that the notion that we have to remember about. That's especially important for me as the person who comes from the country where the biggest changes have been done because of the society. I hope that new normal should not give the way to erosion of the human rights, and I'm confident that we have this capacity to collectively work to make the human dignity and social justice a reality tomorrow. And with this optimist sentence, I would like to finish this session, thanking all the participants, thanking those who were asking the questions that we didn't have a time to answer for, although most of them were rather to the previous panel, which was about the international cooperation, more about the international cooperation of the governments than the one that we have here. So I hope to see you during the open session, and I hope also that the data protection authorities will discuss the outcomes of this panel during the closed session. Thank you very much.